we've grown up on and grown old on. What is different is that the red suitcase has been replaced, or rather briefcase has been replaced by a red tablet from which the Finance Minister will be reading a speech shortly, as you're seeing various officials, senior officials of the Finance Ministry arriving this morning. So what used to be, and forgive the pause for the cause for the atmospherics, but at this point of time a few years ago you would have seen large metal bin loads of budgetary documents with wax seals on them being pulled out and being taken to Parliament. That doesn't happen. Now you get a soft copy for all the members of Parliament to go through the budgetary documents. So some of the visualization for those people who've been following the budget has changed. For younger people following the budget, it is important because it's an educative exercise, if nothing else, on what is happening in the country and where is it going, because it becomes very difficult, unless you're really doing this full time, to follow the intricacy of every policy out there. Okay, so in the condensed format of a less than 1 hour speech, in the condensed format of the bullet points given by the economic survey, you get an understanding of where we are going. So now let me get Ajay Dua back into this conversation. Ajay ji, okay, here we are. Let me ask you the question, because we'll have plenty of time to discuss the details once we have them. So the larger question is, why should this budget be different than it was 3 months ago? Something has changed. An electoral cycle has happened. I'm sure the government is in some sort of feedback loop. They have to consider what the people have just told them in certain places and in certain sectors, in certain areas.
Rishabh, you couldn't be more right. The Prime Minister himself, a couple of days ago, when talking about the budget, mentioned that the time has now come for us to start delivering on the guarantees which he had himself given, the Prime Minister's guarantees during the election campaign, which means the Prime Minister, and he is totally conscious of what's happening on the ground, is going to make sure that action starts where it is required. One, what he's promised as the chief executive of the country to the people. Second, when he looks at, they look at the current situation, that they have to worry now about the allies, and the allies may not be as powerful as they say probably were in 2 or 3 coalition governments in the past. But the fact is that the ruling party is no longer in a majority by itself. So where did they don't get the support? Rural areas, agriculture, farmers. So I think a greater concern is definitely going to be reflected in the budget on the outlays and the schemes which might be indicated, some sort of outlines given by, and a certain amount of provisions made and enhanced on the existing ones. And 2 of these which come to my mind, one is the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, the housing in the rural areas, which is definitely going to get a boost because it has done well. And secondly, maybe the upfront budget outlays for the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Guarantee Scheme. And this scheme could also be extended in the urban areas, though it's a little difficult how to go about it. But the fact remains that the youth of the country do seem to have not voted entirely for the ruling party, despite having full faith in the Prime Minister. There wasn't a Prime Minister who went to the polls with such greater personal popularity. Yet, as a party, the people did not all vote for him so these are the kind of concerns I expect to be seen, and luckily, the fiscal situation of the government would allow that. The government has seen greater revenue, both from indirect taxes, GST, as well as direct taxes, and the $2.1 trillion dividend, 141% of the last year's dividend which the RBI had given. So it's giving the government space that instead of an anticipated 5.1% fiscal deficit, the year which has just ended, it might be only 4.9. And for the current year, the glide of consolidation is obvious because the government's budget is talking about 4.6, etc. And the buoyancy of the economy because of the rate of growth doing well, etc., would facilitate that.
Okay. So the good news is, yes, so the good news Ajay Dua is sharing, as I was sharing at the top of the telecast, is that the economy seems to be healthy. And that's a good place to be. It's a different place to be where in 2020 due to COVID, we were in a nosedive and the economy was retracting and the situation was dire and desperate. It seems like a forgotten memory. So glad that it is. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, there are themes that are set. And let me get to pick up this conversation on that theme, Joyita Basu. So we saw this not too long ago, that the government, the Prime Minister setting the theme, that he said, look, now we have to worry about the youth, we have to worry about the women, we have to worry about the farmers, and we have to worry about the poor. There are 4 new caste classes in this country. And with that themology in mind is how we have to present our thinking, our priorities, and our goals. Is that going to be a theme that we see continued, or do we see something different? Some different prioritization logic being brought to forth today?
I don't think so. Different prioritization is not going to happen. I mean, the sectors the segments he has talked about, he has rightly talked about them. Youth, they're kind of, there is a perception going there that is immense joblessness. It's a different matter. The problem with Indian youth also is that they expect, when you're talking about jobs, they're talking about mostly government jobs. Or when the visuals, like say for example, 2 jobs in some small town and it attracts say maybe 25,000 people, these visuals do not come across as good. So let us see whether it is not just about job creation but also entrepreneurship creation, whether that becomes the focus of the government, especially when it comes to the youth. In women, when it comes to women, obviously we are talking about self-help sectors and as middle class and upper middle class and women who are, so many of them are in service, they expect tax rationalization. But I hope that tax rationalization should happen across the board and should not just be concentrated towards women. And you see, so this way, if you look at it, when these are the segments he talks about, he's covering a whole large section of the population. Women, when you're looking at women, they're around, say, 50% of the population. But at the same time, you see, it is not just about doing things, it's also about perception management. Certain perceptions are going out of hand. And because in terms of, because there is social media, it is that, so they will have to give they have to implement certain measures which grab the eyeballs right now.
Okay, so no, eyeball grabbing, because like I said, this can have contrarian perspectives also. That listen, this is the government's first budget for the next 5 years. This is the time when you go for broke and do all the difficult things. For the Prime Minister, this is a Prime Minister coming for a 3rd term. He's got to be at his peak of his confidence because not in my lifetime has a Prime Minister ever returned to swear-in for the 3rd term. That's how long it's been. And I know I've got plenty of grey hair to prove it. So let me get Bindu Dalmia in. Bindu ji, what's the theme now? Because a budget is all sorts of incremental small changes, this changes. But the effort is made by the government to present it in a theme. What theme do you expect this time around?
I expect, sir, that competitive federalism is going to play out in a big way. It's not just what the allies want. Other states are going to follow suit, and rightly so. Let me explain why. Because action, job creation, development happens at the state level. And rightly so, they are demanding that, as per the mandate of the 15th Finance Commission, they get their rightful share of funds for development. And if they can't, the government should provide the resources to do so, because job creation will happen at the state level and at the, as I said earlier, at urbanization. 60, these are the prominent thematic themes that I envisage. Urbanization, 70%, 60% of India is yet to be developed. It's a huge scope out there. We have still not fully tapped into the China +1 policy and optimized on that. There is big scope over there too. And what is being discussed and anticipated is, aside from enlarging the PLI schemes from the 14 sectors, an ELI could be in the offing, which is incentivizing employment-intensive schemes. So we need schemes that are actionable, on ground, measurable quantum, and fast-tracked.
Okay.
This is A time to course correct, Gulati. We cannot be in limbo and status quo.
Gati Shakti. Okay, Gati Shakti. Ladies and gentlemen, Gati Shakti basically means, and I've spent a lot of time with all the ministers, including the PM, trying to understand what it means. It means that I've grown up in a country where one agency will come and lay a beautiful, nice tarmac outside my house. Then some other agency will come and dig it to lay a sewer pipeline. Okay. Then a third agency will come and say, no, actually we also want to, we are a private sector, we are now laying your internet cable. Now the idea is, why couldn't you guys all do it once and for all together? That's what Gati Shakti is supposed to be about. It's not easy, but I'm asking a larger question on budget themology. Samir Gogia, let's pick it up. What was it last time around? We were told it's women, it's farmers, it's youth. Let's pick on youth. The youth of the country, Mr. Gogia, I know this is true for you, okay? It is true for me. All of us in our organizations have jobs available. It is a struggle finding the people to fit those jobs. I have to take so many interviews and I have plenty of jobs available to just know people who can tell me where was Mahatma Gandhi born. Okay, as a journalist, I feel you should know that. In which year was the Second World War? As a journalist, you should know that. What is India's GDP? I can tell you 9 out of 10 candidates applying for a job here sometimes cannot even tell me what India's GDP is, and they are expected to become TV anchors and journalists to discuss the budget one day. It's a problem. What do we do?
I think you picked up the right chord. I think if you see the survey, it talks about creating 8 million jobs annually. So what they are also looking at, creating a major role play of private sector to create a job. If you see the balance sheet of most of the private companies for last 3 years, they have shown a considerable increase, which means the corporate sector have made up money, but the government want the private sector to create more jobs for the youth. If you see the scenario today, the jobs are not that vocational where they can actually get you a job in the market. We have a strength which can work either which way. We have more percentage majority of youth available in the country. But however, the job creation has to be two-sided. It has to be a private player also need to play their role to create jobs, and the youth need to be equipped well so that they can fit into that job. You're right. Most of the education right now actually is not where they can create job for the youth, and the focus has to be shift from normal bookish knowledge to vocational education where they can actually go out.
But Sameerji, how quickly can you actually do that? For example, how is Deloitte cracking this? Are you working with universities? Are you working with individuals? I am assuming that you have your in-house training program, okay, that actually you bring in people and you pay them a stipend and you train them, and it's only when they're trained that they actually go on to advanced positions. I have to do the same. I'm assuming that the person joining me first 6 months, I have to teach them what to do, then they'll be in a position to contribute. Is that across the board, including the companies that you advise?
Yes. If you're talking about specifically Deloitte, the path has already been laid out. We have specific universities also built in the campus where we take on graduate, train them and make them equipped for the job. So that's the roadmap already in place and already implemented. And most of the professional firms, if you talk about other private professional firms in the fraternity, even they have started doing that because they picked up raw graduate from the college and they train them so that they have a future in the professional world, whichever way they want to pursue. And that's already been implemented.
Okay. Let's address this. Mithali joining us in this morning as well. Joyita is with us also. Joyita is a print journalist. Joyita, what do we do? Because you and I know, okay, that jobs are available. We ourselves are seeking for people, but it is difficult to find the right skill sets. Why, in the age of internet where you can put applications online, what's the difficulty?
Well, the difficulty is, I think, in the education system. The way these people are kind of, coming out of their schools and colleges, they are absolutely, it's unbelievably bad. As you rightly pointed out, Risha, I myself can offer at least 4 to 5 people jobs, but I'm just not getting that kind of people. And the other point is what has happened is that, because of the startup culture, the startups have started giving high salaries, huge salaries to people should not be getting maybe about 20,000, they're offering them 50,000. As a result of which, but these companies do not have a future. As a result of which, the whole job market has got completely skewed. Now, the only way there has to be rationalization in terms of salaries that are offered, and number two, in terms of skilling. Now, the thing is, you see, I mean, you can skill people once you have got a set of people who are willing to work hard and who are willing to, but certain basic things like in our profession, say for example, you need a good knowledge of English, at least grammar, get the basic grammar right. If you do not know it is I am and you say I are, you see that is the problem.
No, but
So
no,
it
no,
is fundamentally the problem of
that
the
same
education
individual,
system.
but that same individual, Joyita, has probably done, an honors in English literature and got 95% in their English board exams. So what do? It's a problem. We've had this conversation regarding NEET, okay, which has been chaotic in one level, but there is difficulty because you're saying that the kids are under pressure. We don't want extremely tough exams because, there is an issue about how much pressure we put on our children. But at the same time, we're not skilling them. It's a big onion to unravel.
Yes, but then you see the whole system of the exams, right from the level of the schools, what happens nowadays, people are ticking answers. Okay, that was not like that when we were in school. We were writing pages and pages of, content.
But did we
So
like
what
that? We
now?
probably hated that.
Yeah, but the thing is, you see, that trained us for what we became later. I think that is a
Okay,
fundamental problem.
tough one. Mithali, it's the biggest onion. Okay, person who cracks it wins a Bharat Ratna Nobel Prize. It might be you this morning. Okay, so crack it for us. How do we create an environment in which we can adapt the skills required by industry to those that are being provided by education?
So I think, Rishabh, the person who wins should be getting an onion given the rate of inflation rather than the Bharat Ratna.
We are told inflation rate is very good. It's very comfortable. It's only 5%.
Food inflation, Rishabh, food inflation. But coming to this point, very clearly, Rishabh, what we really need to see is more industry academia linkages. It's the same in my sector, it's the same in your sector. If we can get some time, with interns, where the salary of the intern is kind of taken care of by either the government or by the university that they are coming from as part of their university curriculum, and they come and work with us for just 6 months or 8 months. This is something I do at Nikor Associates, where people who are in university come and intern with me just part-time, in the evenings or afternoons, just to build their skills, and that enhances their employability by at least 10x, because I've seen the number of job offers my ex-interns are getting versus other people. And that industry academia linkage, it changes a lot of the attitude of the student. It changes, their adaptability. It changes their learning capacity. So I think, and also it makes them skilled, for the kind of jobs that we are able to offer them. And I think this is the answer even for the secondary sector, because when I speak to a lot of people in the manufacturing space, they tell me the same thing. We have new machinery that, does not exist in the industrial training institutes, machinery that does not exist in several of the new private sector skill training institutes either. And they need people to operate that machinery. Just if some apprentices could come and, work with them. So the apprenticeship scheme, I feel, is something that needs to be revitalized, boosted, expanded.
Okay.
And also we need to focus on long-term skilling.
No, so long-term skilling, reskilling, it's a perennial exercise. So trust me, morning, evening, night, I'm having conversations with some of our senior camera persons and producers, people who've been doing this for 30, 40 years, and telling them that you need to reskill yourselves. The digital medium, today you can edit on your phone. The day of edit bays and edit machines is gone. There are little kids, who are doing this. So you need to reskill yourselves. So let me ask General Bhatt into this. General Bhatt, how many kids today are studying, aspiring to study, have the opportunity or indeed the ability to go out and study rocket science and space design and aerodynamic design that would be relevant to the industry that you're representing?
Yeah, what inputs I get from industry, from startups and all, there is a huge deficiency of skilled people. and especially in the domain of space, in the domain of rocket sciences, where even institutions, there are not very many institutions which are offering these courses. But that said, in the last 2 to 4 years, there has been an interest towards space. And many IITs, some triple ITs and engineering colleges are now opening up to create these skill sets for the future. But as on today, there is a deficiency.
Okay, so there is a deficiency. So, big onion, what do we do? How do we crack it? It's a really complex thing to do. So let me thematically then pick up one more issue, okay, before we're going to take a very short break. Then, of course, we have a live countdown to the shots that you're seeing on your screens, which, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is the Ministry of Finance. In the old quarters as they exist, those quarters will eventually become a museum open to the public as new secretariats are built around Delhi after the new parliament has already been done. So the entire gamut of how the budget is visualized by all of us is going to change. It has already been digitized, and the physical location of the finance ministry may indeed change within the next year, 2, 3, 4 years. We'll find out. But the other obvious conversation is, and let me start with Joyita Basu. Joyita Basu, we have seen a more than obvious across the political spectrum, everybody agrees upon it, that a larger scale conversation needs to happen, implementation needs to happen on women in the workforce, women as entrepreneurs, women as the people who are the beneficiaries of social justice, the houses for the women, the toilets for the women. It has emerged as a themology all the way down to 33% representation for women in parliament. What more needs to be done?
Rishabh, first of all, we need more women in the workforce. When we are talking in terms of, say, for example, the developed world, the participation of women in the workforce in countries like the US, it is over 50%, 57%. In China, it is over 60%. In our country, it is somewhere in the 30s, which is really, really low. So you cannot aspire to even lift women's status out of what they are unless and until there is more participation of women in the workforce. So you see, I mean, obviously, while all these things that you talked about are giving women a sense of security, are feeling them, making them confident enough to come out of their homes, more needs to be done. I would say right from in fact, if you look at the numbers, rural participation of women in the workforce is more than in the case of urban women. It is 25% only in the urban areas. So obviously it is the urban areas they also need to concentrate on. And right now we are looking at things like they are planning to bring in this Pradhan Mantri Yojana and all in the urban areas also. Let us see how that changes the situation.
Okay, so there is a direct contribution which is readily and easily and immediately calculable, and there's an indirect contribution. So let me address this with Bindu Dalmia, who spent a large part of her life figuring this out. Bindu ji, at the point when a woman in a household receives a water line so that she doesn't have to go and travel to collect water every day, receives a toilet, maybe a roof over her head for the first time, what economic impact does this have? How do we actually calculate it in terms of hours saved and therefore hours put elsewhere?
It's a very intense question. Thank you, Rishabhji. But the point is, I think the aspirational woman of today would not just be happy being a Labharti of these schemes. I think the women participation has to increase, we know that, but how? We need more gender responsive budgeting in this budget, where steps are taken towards women specific schemes and pro-women schemes, because it comes under two categories. Secondly, we need the dropout rates of women from education to somehow improve. And just being happy with water and gas, it's inadequate. Women need more superior skilling, and the laggard here has been overall in our human development indices, Rishabhji, which have lagged behind in education spend and healthcare spend and skilling.
So let me try to pick your mind on the ideological premise of this as well, if you'll allow me, ma'am. So we saw in the election two premises brought to the fore. One from the current ruling party said that, okay, one of our primary flagship drivers will be something called Lakpati Didis. Okay, we're going to train women and we're going to give them a drone and they can use the drone and therefore earn 1 lakh rupees per year. Then you had the other side, which is currently the opposition, says, no, why don't you just give the women 1 lakh rupees a year and then they'll spend it and they'll spend it well. They'll spend it on education, on health, on home improvement, and that has a beneficiary impact. Both have pros and cons. Which path should we follow?
I think one thing that's very, very important is that at the time of forming a manifesto, regional parties and all political parties across the spectrum have gone overboard in promising irrational freebies, which plays hell into the state's finances and they're not able to honor. We need practical solutions for this instead of just freebies being doled out and promises. Let's look at the mudra loans. I don't know honestly how effective the collateral-free mudra loans have been in terms of NPAs against them. Have the loans been returned? We can't just have a disbursement of loans or freebies that will generate jobs. We need formal job creation. We need a more forward-thinking and practical approach towards women's involvement because it is a known and proven factor that it increases the GDP by elevates it by about 27%.
Okay.
And just these ad hoc measures of a Lakpati Didi or 1,000 rupees per woman in Delhi or something, how far will that take us? Is
all
that
right.
what the
All right.
aspiration of an educated woman is?
It's not ad hoc per se, because you can argue that there's a themology from women representation in politics to Lakpati Didi to nutrition to pregnancy to maternity leave. There's of course a host of things that needs to happen simultaneously. All of it needs to click together. But ladies and gentlemen, there is something which is in economics also relevant and it's almost impossible to calculate. It's the stuff that makes for the Nobel Awards is, and this is the question I put, that the point of time in which you empower a person with the basic necessities of life, which means that they can get water without having to travel 3 hours a day, and therefore you save those many human hours per day, which is then open for economic impact. What is the economic impact you generate that from the day? Let me put that thought to Mithali. Mithali, now on a larger thought, okay, when the schemes get saturated, 80%, 90%, 100%, and the women become for the first time in their lives, as they've been becoming the homeowners, the toilets are in their names, the Awas are either the homes are owned by them, or jointly owned with their husbands. I mean, the home is your most valuable asset, yours and mine included. And if it's co-owned with the woman, the prestige factor, the respect factor, everything goes up. The social indicators go up. What are the economic benefits? When do we see them?
Absolutely, Rishabh, and we start seeing them actually from very soon. So, this is something which is my bread and butter, calculating the economic cost benefit analysis of government schemes. And, what we basically do is like a notional economic valuation. So it's exactly how you're saying, right? 1 hour less spent collecting water means that I now have that hour available for productive work if I choose to do it, right? And that can be valued when, like the minimum wage for casual labor.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to make a pitch for better 5G connectivity in this union budget for wherever Mithali currently is. She seems to be on a highway. 5G connectivity in my studio really good. I'm getting 200 Mbps, believe it or not. Yeah, it's true, and I'm in a basement, but it's a bit patchy, even though the 5G rollout in this country is very, very good. I'm going to take a quick thought from Mr. Gogia in our studios. We're going to take a very short break. The visuals on your screens, of course, will keep on building. The speech was a lengthy one last time around, so you expect a 1 hour long speech, and then we will have all day to dissect it for you in every possible measure. Each one of us will take away the little bit. There will be some headlines on taxation, maybe or maybe not. Sameer Gogia, why do it on taxation? What's the pro for doing it? And what's the con to say, no, don't do it, hold fast, spend the money elsewhere?
See, I think all these measures, the fiscal measures, need to go along with other policy. If you talk about other path, it talks about deregulation as well. But through these fiscal measures, I think the scope is not that high, because there are too less number of taxpayers in the country currently. So any tax measures ultimately will not have that major push, but definitely it has to add on to the disposable income of the middle class and the lower middle class people. So there has to be a push to be done so that the consumption can increase, and when you have the consumption and you have to fight out the inflation simultaneously, you need to take care of the fact that money keeps on flowing back to the economy and there is a overall growth, because we have seen a consistent growth over last 3 years in the economy. So we want to maintain that. So it has to be a push.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching and happen to be of the middle class and get frustrated every time you see a budget and don't see much change, and even if it does, it's incrementally so small, it's told to you like it's a big deal. That, actually, if you do all of this and then you're up to 7 lakhs and 10 lakhs, but actually it's not a lot, okay, it's a few thousand rupees a year. Incorporate yourself, okay, create Rishabh Gulati Private Limited, okay, and see how much taxation you can save that way. This is not meant to be advice, it's meant to be humor.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.